OMG. Happy February. Can you guys see my beating heart?
Yes.
That's
Oh,
nice.
nice.
Hi, everyone. My name is Annabelle Scott. Welcome to the February meeting of the Bolinas Civic Group, our Bolinas community meeting. I'm happy to see you all. Oh, cherubs. Love.
Nice.
Civics and chill is the theme. We're all at home. I hope you have a blanket and some tea. We're going to jump right in. We have a packed agenda for you. We'll hear from Megan Matson, Anna O'Malley, if she joins us. I hope she does. Enzo Resta, John Cozy, Howard Dillon is snuck in there, but I didn't add him to the slide because we haven't figured it out. Megan and Peter, John Borg, and time permitting, we'll hold a discussion. I take just a minute to thank our sponsors, West Marin Fund, KWMR, and Not Other Joel, for all of their support to keep Bolinas Civic Group going. And make a little plug, you can take a screenshot of this or write down the URL to donate to support the efforts of the Bolinas Civic Group. These meetings are made possible by a small but deeply dedicated group of people who love Bolinas just like you. But the meetings definitely don't make themselves. So show your love this month with a donation if you can. Anything and everything helps. Our next meeting will be on March 12th, 2025. You can make a note of that and we'll send out an email as it gets a little closer. But with that, we'll jump right in. Megan is our first announcement with Bo Wash, a name that I have given.
What is that? Yeah, I just had a quick announcement. A lot of you might be already tracking this, but there's a mass day of rallies on Monday, February 17th. The top call is to get our bodies to Washington. It'll be noon, White House and Mall. I'm tracking the organization 5050.1. They organized the February 5th rallies at all town halls and capitals around the country. I went to the Sacramento one. It was excellent. So I just wanted to get that on everyone's calendars. There are, of course, ongoing, almost daily rallies, and we're just at a moment where our physical bodies and our own vocal cords and our paper and our markers and our music is very much needed. So daily, anywhere your Washington might be, street corners, capitals, Golden Gate Bridge. It's legal for up to 50 people to be on the bridge with signs for up to 2 hours. So I've done that before by myself, and it was mildly awkward, but good. And then again, Washington itself, where there are, of course, daily things happening, and then the big day, Monday. So thank you, Annabelle, for that opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. Next up, we have Anna O'Malley, who I see is here. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you. Hi, it's great to see you all. I'm just here to share, as many of you know, I've transitioned into a community level role of holding space for healing in the Commonweal Garden. And I am really excited to share that we're about to launch our spring sessions of community medicine circles. And I wanted to share, is it possible to share my screen, Annabelle?
It should be.
Awesome. Before I do that, just wanting to say that we've done a winter session and we're doing 3 different groups that meet once a month. And I'm really in this listening phase of what would best serve the community. And if you have input, please let me know. But I'm starting with healthy aging for folks with chronic conditions. And another circle is a women's wellness circle. And a third is for folks with cognitive decline, or even concerns that you might have memory loss or a family history of it. And for folks that have early stages of dementia, their caregivers are welcome to join. Families welcome to join. These circles are inclusive. They're on a sliding scale. No one turned away for lack of funds. And they're in this gorgeous space that we're holding as a nature-placed center for healing. And we just did our winter session, and it's been so beautiful to be in circles of like-hearted individuals right now in community. It just feels like a beautiful place to be putting our energy. So let me see if I can share. Here we go. So Natura Institute for Ecology and Medicine is the name of our program here in the Commonweal Garden. And the URL you can see up here, but I'll also put it in the chat. It's naturainstitute.org, and that will take you to this page. And then if you go to the offerings, it will take you right here. And you see these 3 groups, and just came out of a women's wellness circle this morning. It was so good. The women's circle is going to stay in the morning, 10 to noon. The healthy aging and cognitive decline will be in the afternoon by popular request. So you'll see a brief description here, and then you can just register there. If you have any trouble at all, just email me or contact me through this webpage, and or contact me throughout any of the channels. But yeah, I'm just delighted to be holding space in this way. Also, around the fire, we do full moon fire circles. It's rained out this month, but yeah, and more things are coming. But that's what I've got now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. Next up, we have Enzo Resta from Bolinas Film Festival. Hi, Enzo. I think you're still muted. We would love to hear from you.
Can you hear me?
Now we can. Hey.
There we go. All right, let me just backtrack and say thank you, Annabelle, and thank you to the Bolinas Civic Group for the opportunity to share information amongst us all. I was reflecting on Megan's comments and Anna's comments and thinking how in some ways they maybe belong together. You know, the political reaction and the importance of nourishing and healing the self may share space importantly. But anyway, on the 22nd, we're presenting Walter Murch's latest documentary. It's a relatively short documentary. It's called Her Name Was Moviola. Walter does have in his little farmhouse an old Moviola editing machine. It's kind of like it's actually the tool that was used from the 1920s until about the 1990s, where they would literally cut film, hand crank, rewind film, and fast forward film. It's a fascinating glimpse into like pre-digital film editing. And it's been featured at a number of festivals. And Walter will be there to present it and to support post-film Q&A on February 22nd, Saturday, at the beautiful Calvary Church Starlight Theater at 6 p.m. It's free to all. And Walter is just such a brilliant man. We love sitting with Walter in town. You know, there are those people that we sit with and you just find yourself retelling the things you heard in that conversation. As an example, when he was recently in Torun, Poland, he was invited to a cinematographers conference, and that was where Copernicus was born. So he ended up coming up with a lecture on Copernicus's theory of the evolution of planets, which indicated that Earth was not the center of the universe, which then led me to go read that essay. Actually, it's a letter that was sent to the Pope. It's really kind of a comical letter, like, excuse me, but this concept that the Earth is the center of the universe is no longer valid. Anyway, it's a hoot. My point is, Walter's just a wonderful man to be in company with, and he will be there for a free screening February 22nd at 6 p.m. And subsequently, I just want to note that we did come up with an outdoor screen And we'll be doing some outdoor free in the park screenings as soon as we get organized for that, which will be fun. Anyway, thank you all. Thank you, Annabelle.
Thanks, Enzo. And I would be remiss, and I'm running on fumes here this evening, that I did not introduce our dear Ashley, who is involved with Bolinas Civic Group, but also Bolinas Film Festival, and will be helping moderate comments and our discussion at the end. Hi, Ashley. Thanks for being here. And next up, we'll hear from John Cozy with Bolinas Eucalyptus Project.
All right. Hi, everybody. I am John Cozy, speaking as always for the Bolinas Eucalyptus Project. And as most of you know, the project is to remove eucalyptus trees either side of Mesa Road up from Olima Bolinas Road. It's 10.5 acres, 7.5 of those acres on BPUD land. And then we would follow the tree removal and stump grinding with a revegetation plan that's being designed by H.T. Harvey Ecological Consultants. And we are committed to a long-term aftercare of the land. And before any trees are cut, we will have that plan thoroughly buttoned up, and it'll be an exciting thing moving into the future. The tree removal is really just the beginning of this project. The restoration is forever, and it will be the gift to this community and to the ecological world at large. So a lot has happened lately. To review, we submitted our application to the county planner in September, heard back from them early October. There was a lot of back and forth and around, and then we had a Zoom with the some folks from the planning department and planning division and Dennis Rodoni and Public Works a couple of weeks ago. And that was there was some spirited dialogue during that meeting. But what I came away from it with was I was really impressed with Dennis Rodoni. I put it to him, I said, Dennis, this citizens group here has raised $150,000. We've spent $140,000 of these donor dollars to get to this point in the application process. And as it is right now, we have a $40,000 gap that needs to be filled to complete the work to get permitted. Is there something you could do? And he was right on it. He said, yes, there is. We will work to get some monies together to get this thing permitted. And he was just really supportive. Another thing he said at the end of this meeting, which impressed me, there had been a lot of talk of additional studies and breaking the job up and going against the advice of our foresters and arborists. And Dennis pretty much said, yeah, no, I don't think more studies are really what's needed here. And that just impressed me, that he's tuned into the project, and I really feel that, and that's a huge help. So since then, the county has gotten back to us, and they have now accepted our application as complete, which is a step up the ladder. And now we go on to the environmental review, which enacts CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, which came into law in 1970. Unfortunately, CEQA is feared these days, and I just looked at an email for 10 seconds before we came on the air here, and there's 18 points that they look at, environmental boxes to be checked. Unfortunately, when they came into existence in 1970, they were barely a speed bump to the clear-cut redwood old growth logging that was going on. It just a lot of people thought, oh, this is going to help, but it really didn't. Anyway, that's a story for a different time. So the county has accepted our application. Now we go through this environmental review. And another major development is in the last few months, Georgia at the BPUD has really jumped in with both feet and has been real hands-on with us. And moving forward, she will take over all our communications back and forth with the official agencies. And I also want to thank Megan Matson has been with us quite a bit lately, helping us along. And Georgia, speaks the language that they use over there at the Civic Center. And when I try to communicate with those people, I may as well be speaking Czechoslovakian or Mandarin. It's a whole different way of communicating. So big thank you to her and to the BPUD board for really jumping in. The first 4 years, we did our best to not burden the BPUD, as they are always slammed with plenty to do. But now that we are getting down to the nitty gritty, this is a really good time to have them all in on this project. We will, of course, be kept in the loop, and we'll be providing background research and whatnot. Anything we can do, anything she needs, we will be supporting the BPUD with that. They are co-applicants and they are owners of 70% of the job. So it makes perfect sense. And they are a well-respected public utility. So it's great that this teamwork is falling into place. And again, I'm feeling pretty good about Dennis Rodoni, Supervisor Rodoni's involvement. So things are looking up, and I'll know a lot more a month from now. And until then, be well, friends.
Gosh, John, thank you so much for the good news. Congratulations. Good work, all. Very, very exciting. As a follow-up, Howard will be giving a very brief community concern, and then we'll move right along. Hey, Howard, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
There we go. Hi, sorry about that. Yeah, just a follow-up, related, but not the same. Everywhere I look around the Bolinas Mesa, I see eucalyptus sprouts, sometimes fields full of them. And there's nobody actually addressing that issue at this moment. It's outside what the BEP group is doing. That nobody seems concerned or interested. I'm expressing to the community that it really is a problem. I mean, you can have an opinion about removing mature trees, but I'm talking about sprouts, little sprouts that are coming up everywhere. And if you know anybody who has property that has trees sprouting on them, please talk to them, because it's easy to get them out when they're sprouts. It gets harder every year, and more expensive. So just a plea to the community to be aware of the sprouts, eucalyptus sprouts coming up everywhere, and that they are a problem for the future. And just to please be aware of that and try to spread the word that we need to deal with removing eucalyptus sprouts before they become trees and fall over and kill us. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you so much, Howard. Really appreciate it. And I had hoped to be giving you all a little update and a report on the community needs survey that BCG conducted. We're going to put it off until next month because we've come into contact with a very brilliant person whose name is Mina, and she is on this call, and she is going to help us analyze this data based on the last 25 years of public records and all that has been done in Bolinas. She's a genius, and it's going to be really cool. So we've got the next month to put it together, and I think it will really beautifully complement what we're about to hear from Peter and Megan about. But I wanted to give you just this tiny little teaser because I love a word cloud. And Mina made this I don't know if you can see. In 1 or 2 sentences, what is your biggest concern at this time in our community? And this may not be surprising to us, but this is what 200 respondents said. And so we'll have much more to share with you next month, but that's kind of fun. In the meantime, we'll move right on to the Bolinas Infrastructure Initiative with the ever glorious Megan Matson and Peter Lucchetti. Hey, y'all.
Thanks, Annabelle.
Mm-hmm.
Ever glorious would be fun. Let's see, I'll just intro it, and then are you doing sharing slides from there, or should I try?
I am happy to do that. Let me pull it up.
So this, I think part of this awareness started with really paying attention to the always glorious Bolinas Eucalyptus project. And when those questions started coming around about how do we pay for things in Bolinas when we have infrastructure needs? And as an unincorporated town, it's really not very clear. The Bolinas Public Utility District has its capital projects needs and ongoing operations. The fire department has its own. The various nonprofits have their own. And then we have, it's sort of mysterious to me how our roads get fixed or not fixed, and the rest of it. So this idea came about that I think we had on the KWMR Epicenter show with Will. Peter and myself joined, and we had a discussion there. And Peter gave a little update to Civic Group a while back. And I'll hand it off. But what we had in mind, we work with another city in Southern California, mostly on their water and wastewater infrastructure. And we put together a binder of all the immediate and then the future needs, and it changes over time, but you can see all of the project needs in one place in draft form or refined form, and get an idea of the more holistic project needs of a community. So we decided to start pulling it together for Bolinas, so that we'd all at least be looking at the same needs and starting to identify, binder like Mitt Romney, John. So I'll turn it over to Peter, who's really done the Bears work initially, but keep in mind this whole time, this is really an exercise, an inquiry, a study of hypotheticals that we could refine together over time. There's no aspect of this that is contemplating incorporation. That's a dead end. I think we have talked a few times in the Bolinas Civic Group about examining the possible benefits of a community services district if we wanted any domestic funding, but we think that's a larger conversation for another time. But I just want to make clear, this is a study and inquiry and exercise. And excuse poor Peter's ongoing cough. Peter.
Thank you, Megan. Good evening, everybody. As I think Megan's done a pretty good job of introducing this. For me, it really has two parts to it. One is a very practical, not terribly exciting budgeting process. And I'm going to go to the next slide here, Annabelle, and just explain what our motivation for it is. You know, we have lots of things that you're familiar with through the Civic Group process over the last 2 years that are important to the community. Of course, housing just appeared on the word collage that you saw right at the center. And then we have a picture that Steve Matson did for us here on the right about the possibility of sea level rise affecting the community. And then we have this question about transparency and planning and funding our community. These are all the things that are on our mind, you know, quality of life and so on. If you could go to the next slide, Annabelle. I think this part's really important to me, and I think we should all try to kind of gather around and understand this. You know, we're an unincorporated community. We're a village. We don't have a government, and incorporation's a non-starter. Megan talked about that, and we can get into why it doesn't make sense. I looked at a lot of Marin communities. In fact, all the smaller ones, Belvedere, Tiburon, Fairfax, and then of course the West Marin communities that are not incorporated or don't have a civic identity like a city. And I discovered the same thing in every one that I looked at, which is it would be prohibitively and outrageously and unacceptably expensive to try to become a town or a city. It makes no sense whatsoever. In fact, I feel sorry for the little communities that are towns and cities because they spend more than half of their money on management and stuff that really doesn't improve their life every day. So we rely on the Marin County Board of Supervisors and staff. We don't have a defined budget. They don't give us a budget. Let's start building one, because if you can't visualize your community through a budget, my worry is that we'll never take care of our needs. It's always, in these conversations with the county, you're always sort of tossing another ball in the air. Well, we'll put this ball in the air today, or this one over here, or this one over here.
Yeah, or the latest, I know a billionaire.
Or I know a billionaire. I mean, it doesn't allow us to ground the conversation. So the concept of what I'm calling a proxy budget affords the opportunity to plan more and get more focused on what we need to do to have the conversation and the information to support better engagement in funding and planning. We can't really have a legitimate conversation with the county in the absence of some of this organization, I think, and this clarity. If you could go to the next slide. I have created, for those who are interested, and I'm happy to share this with anybody who cares to get into it. I created a proxy budget, and the way that I did it is because 3 steps. There are 3 columns here. I used the Fairfax budget as an example. Then I did a takeoff of what Bolinas would look like if it were Fairfax scaled down to our size. And then I went and I did Bolinas adjusted, which was, well, we can do better than just scaling it down to its size. We know a lot of things about Bolinas. We know what we spend on the fire department. That budget's published. We know what we spend on BPUD. That's published. That's water and wastewater for part of the community. We know what the community center spends. That budget is published. So I gathered all those budgets and I put them in here. And the goal was to come up with an estimate of the amount of money it would take to run our community for a year. So if we were a real town, I estimate approximately that it would take, and this is conservative, I'm being pretty generous here, that it would cost our town about $6 or $7 million a year to run the community, to run the village. And the question is, one of the questions we have is Marin County spending $6 or $7 million a year to run our village? And do I have the line items defined correctly? And that requires community input, I think, at this point, which means, well, what are our capital plans? How much should we be spending on roads? What projects do we think we need to do? Where do we take this from here? Now, I just want to say one other thing in sort of switching from budget to a separate topic. While I've been working on all of this, I've been working on another topic that's tangentially related to it. And I'll just end with this. If you're curious, while we don't know what our budget is, Marin County knows what its budget is. It's $815 million. Their budget is. I've looked at it very carefully. So there's an $815 million budget. And if we took our share of the Marin County budget for our little village and said, well, let's define it by the amount of money that the county would give us per person or per household in our community, per person. I did it per capita population based on the census. So if the county gave us what we deserve in terms of our population for the people who live in the unincorporated area of Marin, out of the 815 million, they would write us a check for 18 million. And I said, well, I just created
For Bolinas or unincorporated?
For Bolinas.
Oh, boy.
And if you do it for all of the county, noting some of the county money goes to the cities. So it's not fair to say it's just unincorporated.
Yeah.
They would have to write us a check for 4.6 million. And I think our budget's somewhere between 6 and 7 million. So we need to get into a conversation about the difference between these two things, the big number and the little number, and start to figure out what makes sense. So Megan, I don't know where you want to go from there. The only other thing I could say is, the other thing that's really interesting that I'll just leave people with, and this gets into a whole other fascinating conversation. It's sort of a, did you know this? You probably know this, or maybe you don't know this. Marin has a lot of parkland at large. Most of it's in West Marin. 90% of it's in West Marin. And if you're not aware of this, 58% of the county land at large is parkland. That leaves a smaller amount of land that pays taxes. The parkland doesn't pay taxes. So the county's budget, $815 million, is in some level handicapped, particularly West Marin, because a lot of the land is parkland, which we think is fantastic. And if you're not aware of this, over 21 million people a year visit the parks in West Marin. 21 million people a year. So a population in West Marin of about 4,500 people, 4,300 people supports 21 million visitors a year. And the county doesn't give us a budget that we can really get our head around. And we sort of want to know, well, what's our destiny? And that's what this conversation's about. Okay, I'm done.
I want to mention, Peter did a lot more work and a lot more
She wouldn't let me
slides.
present it.
And I said, we're just doing little updates. So we'll be back with the next stage of that kind of analysis. I don't know if anyone finds this useful. We'll be back if you find it useful. I got one thumbs, look,
I see
thumbs.
tons of nodding heads, lots of thumbs.
See, all those
clapping
slides you did.
hands. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. And I know we're all on the edges of our seat. We're moving so efficiently tonight, y'all. I'm so proud of us. We're doing great. We're at 6:33. We've got one more speaker. We can talk all night. Well, we can talk for the next hour. So hold your questions, write them down. Stay tuned because this may be the moment many of you have been waiting for. We're going to get an update on Bolinas Post Office from John Borg. I don't know what kind of news we're going to get, but we're going to get some. Hey, John, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
Doing well, thanks.
Thanks, everybody. So gosh, I hate to bum everybody's high, but I do have an update. I think everybody is aware there's a story in the January 29th issue of the Point Reyes Light with the headline "Lease Near for Resurrected Bolinas Post Office."
Oh, great.
And it reported that negotiators are close to completing a deal that could bring the post office back to its original location on Brighton. And there were hopeful comments from the attorney representing the Waterhouse complex owner, who said negotiations over minor details continue, but general consensus seems to have been reached. There were also optimistic comments from the real estate consultant negotiating on behalf of the Postal Service, as well as our Congressman Jared Huffman, who's been helping on the issue for 2 years, and Kent Katikian, a local attorney and skilled negotiator who's been a key community volunteer on returning the facility to Brighton Avenue. There's a small contingent of local folks, Kent, myself, and realtor Tom Redberg, who've been working on behalf of the community to bring the parties together on returning to the original post office space for the past year. And this is after a previous effort to bring the a postal facility to Mesa Park was presented. It was very viable. The post office kind of strung us along for a while, and then they kind of bailed on it and said, you need a permanent location. And so at that point, we had to kind of regroup. And so when the post office lease kind of fell through in 2023, it was like, there's no way we're going to return. It was a contentious break. It was problematic. And so basically returning to the original location was off the table. But since that time, we've kind of come a long way. It's been very delicate, slow, complicated. Both parties, the building ownership and the Postal Service, wanted minimal community members involved. And they also insisted that we be very discreet about what we say publicly. So when the postal stuff first happened, we did updates every month. We did a lot of community activism, outreach, all that kind of stuff. But we had to kind of bite our tongues during this whole process because that was what the parties required. And this led to less community updates, which raised concerns over time that nothing was happening, when in fact, there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. We just couldn't report on it. And I apologize for that. But because our congressman updated the Point Reyes Light reporter for this story, it gave us permission to kind of speak publicly of the status, and that's why I could speak about it now. But at the time, it was very good news a few weeks ago. It still is good now. We remain in a good position, but we're not where we'd like to be, and I'll explain. So starting in January of last year, we worked with the owner of the building and his attorney to update the most recent USPS lease for the space. So what we did was we talked to the owner. He said, yeah, okay, I'm willing to consider them coming back. We took the lease that had expired with the Postal Service and we reworked it. And the owner was very gracious. He dropped previous concerns that derailed the negotiations before. He also froze the lease rate to what it was 3 years prior. And we worked carefully to basically put together a new lease based on the old Postal Service lease. And he actually signed that lease. And by March, we had worked out the new lease. We presented it to Huffman at his office. Huffman brought it to DC. And we assumed that with the lease in hand, the USPS would agree, and soon the post office would be done. So we thought it was going to be done like early last year. But nothing is ever easy. And there were endless delays, requirements for inspections, environmental reports, architectural plans, construction plans, et cetera, et cetera. There was turnover in the department, new real estate managers involved in handling the project, resulting in them having to get up to speed, requiring further updates, not understanding Bolinas, et cetera. So the entire time this is going on, we were told you can't say anything, but the lease is on track, it's going to happen, et cetera, et cetera. But one delay after the other. On January 6th of this year, 2025, ironically, which is Insurrection Day, and with a new Trump administration soon to be sworn in, and after many months of promises, the Postal Service finally sent a new lease draft to the owner and his attorney, which was a huge step. So we had gone from, Brighton Avenue being completely off the table to getting a lease from the Postal Service. And instead of a 5-year lease, they wanted a 10-year lease. And they plan to invest more than $200,000 of improvements to bring the space up to current standards. And we've seen the real estate, the architectural plans. It would be an improved post office to what it was before. So we were very close. The problem is the Postal Service sent a completely new lease draft. The lease that we had provided in March was based on the previous Postal Service template. So while for the most part the lease and the terms were the same, the language was different. And this kind of threw off the attorney for the building owner. There were some clauses that he didn't like. And so the new lease required some modifications that he wanted, but the Postal Service is not really willing to do a lot of changes. And to get a lease from the Postal Service was a huge deal. So this was like, oh. So initially at the time this article came out, our small group, Kent and Tom and I were still actually involved in this, which was good. So we were copied on emails. We were involved with both parties on a conference call to discuss the issues on the lease that needed to be worked out. So we were kind of in there, kind of helping. We didn't do any negotiations, but we took a lot of notes from both parties in terms of what would be required to close the deal. The issues to resolve were not really too difficult, and our group came up with a solution to the lease language that would have satisfied the Postal Service and satisfied the issues raised by the owner's attorney. But the attorney for the owner no longer wanted us involved in finalizing the lease. So as of a few weeks ago, he insisted that we're no longer included in the process, Kent, Tom, and I. So while we were directly involved before, we're no longer involved now. And we're basically waiting to see if both parties can finish the deal. To put it delicately, while the owner, Greg Welsh, has been quite generous and open to doing the deal, his attorney and the Postal Service can both be very challenging to deal with. And it's kind of one of the reasons why this thing has been going on. And further, because now that we're in the midst of the chaos and cuts of a second Trump administration, there's little room for error. If it was up to us, we believe we could have proposed the least language solutions that would have satisfied both parties. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that. And so the Postal Service, we know, will not accept a highly altered lease. But because we're not directly involved, at least now, there's nothing we can do but really wait and hope it gets done. So that's kind of where it's at. And so while this article was very optimistic, which was accurate at the time when we were still involved, we're a bit more in the dark now, but we're still hopeful. So I would liken this process metaphorically to a team of people trying to climb Mount Everest. The two parties, the Postal Service and the attorney for the owner, are like weekend mountaineers who want to conquer Everest, a very difficult and challenging endeavor. So they allow a few Sherpas, me and Kent and Tom, to try to help them on this demanding summit. And I can tell you along the way, we helped keep the ascent on track. We kept the deal alive when it could have easily veered into disaster. We went from the bottom of the mountain, there's no way we're going to go back to that space, to the top of the summit, the last base camp, with the lease draft pending. But at the last minute, before the climb to reach the summit, and with a storm approaching, the mountaineers decided to ditch the Sherpas. We can do this on our own. We don't need you. So this is perhaps the trickiest part of the journey, and we've helped deliver to the final ascent, but they're going on without the Sherpas. So I'm hopeful that this will get done, and we feel that we're in a great position. But throughout this process, nothing has been easy, and I don't want to overpromise. At this point, it's out of our hands. We've done all that we can. We're closer than ever to getting our post office back. And if and when it does return, there will be a party in our barn. If there's anything that anybody in the community can do, we will let you know. But that's basically the status. We're just waiting for the two parties to kind of work it out. If anybody's any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you so much, John. I see one question in the comments from Megan. Does the owner of the building have control of his attorney, and can the town incentivize the owner and attorney to comply with additional funding or etc.?
That's a very good question. So it's a kind of like, it's an odd relationship. The owner who I've had conversations with, who is very open to getting this done. And I think that when this whole thing started, a lot of people kind of piled on with him. I have to be careful what I say publicly, but basically the attorney is very challenging to deal with. The owner, not so challenging to deal with. However, the owner seems to completely defer to the attorney. And we have to be careful about trying to go around the attorney because it makes things more challenging. So that is potentially a card that we can play down the line. If the attorney proposes language that's going to be completely rejected by the Postal Service, then we could potentially approach the owner and try to explain the situation. But it's a little bit difficult, and we don't want to kind of overstep our bounds. We're trying to honor the process and let the two parties negotiate in good faith. And it is frustrating because, like, Kent's a really good attorney, and he's like, oh, all we need to do is add this and it would solve it, in very simple language. But that's not how the attorney is kind of handling it. Yes.
So I see a hand from Stephanie. We can take one more question, and then we're going to take a brief pause, interlude, and then we'll open up for discussion. Stephanie, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Green. I'm the vicar of St. Aidan's, next to the property in question. And I'm just wondering if the lease is dependent on there being a single and continuous owner, or if the lease opens the possibility of the property being sold and then continuing with the new owner.
That's a great question. And actually a sort of sidebar note, the whole property is for sale. And in fact, one of the issues that helped us get the two parties to the table was the fact that this burned out building and vacant building with, if it had a anchor tenant like the US government in there, it would make it an easier building to sell. Since this whole thing started, I think they wanted 5 point something million for the building. He's actually dropped the price down to 3.1 or something like that. Considerable price drop on the building. And so, in fact, what we're negotiating is that if we get the lease, it's actually going to help them sell the building. it helps the owner sell the building, and that's been one of the motivations. And whoever buys the building will inherit that lease. But the lease that's being offered by the Postal Service, it's a standard Postal Service lease. It's a good lease, and it's a great tenant to have. To have a 10-year lease from the US government it would be a really beneficial thing for the owner. And this is something that, we try to kind of communicate, but we have to be careful. We can't be too overbearing on either party.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, John. I want to take just a moment, hold your questions. And I've got Karen Quay, Steve Matson, and Megan Matson, who are 3 of our board members here in the room. And I'm wondering, this is on the spot, so no pressure. But this meeting is going so quickly, and I would love for all of you to share, or one of you even to share, why the civic group is so important and what we're doing here and what we can do next month. How can we spread the word to our neighbors and our friends about these highly efficient, informative, wonderful, fun meetings? Does any of you feel extremely inspired to unmute yourselves and share something about your service to the community in this way? We're gonna wait. Oh yeah, Karen, I just asked you to unmute. That might give you a, there you are.
I think that this meeting is an invaluable opportunity for the community to update itself, to identify problems, and to put on its own agenda what to do next. I think that we need to rope in more people in the community, and I'm not sure exactly how to do that. Perhaps the putting up of signs all over town would help those people who are not always on their phones or on their computers. And maybe that would draw in more people, as would maybe in-person meetings, I'm not sure. But I think that the website for the civic group and the recording of the meeting are both valuable tools for the community to keep in touch with one another. And I think that the projects that we hear about are terrific and have been since we've started having meetings, or since they've been online anyway. Thanks for the opportunity to say that.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. I say this in almost every meeting. I've been something, I don't know what happened the last few months. There were illnesses and things that I haven't been here, but I used to say at every meeting that I feel so inspired by the civic group because I'd never been able to figure out where to get information on Bolinas. It was always in about 1,000 different places and sometimes sort of vague and private, and you had to get the right email. And this is one that's really open and it's clear and it's concise and it's done really well. Megan, I see you're unmuted and I think you might want to say something about it too.
Yeah, I've been talking a lot, so I wasn't jumping at the mute button, but I just value the cadence of us coming together, large or small, and the even just the fact that it gives a little deadline to the various threads that we're all puttering away on. Go, oh, civic group's coming up. We better get our shit together. So that's helpful. And then there are stories that then can go out onto KWMR or the hearsay updates. So I guess in terms of reaching more people, it seems like maybe in the spring, having an in-person a specific in-person civic group where we really focus on grabbing 2 more people or having some low stakes food draw again to the in-person. And then also the fact that it's online, if we all just got the Zoom link out ahead of time to our own networks, and then circulated the YouTube link, so people started getting a feel for it, that could be great.
I think that's a great idea. And I put this in the newsletter. I think probably many of you who are here got that it's really more important than ever for all of the reasons to get involved at the hyper local level, that these issues matter a lot. They impact you, they impact your neighbor, they impact the person down the street. And we can come together and in 51 minutes learn about eucalyptus trees, post office, major infrastructure projects, and highly detailed budgets, and all of the things I think we're hearing from many, many people. So I continue to be inspired by it. And I would love to open the floor. We're way ahead of schedule. So if anyone has questions for our speakers, we'll take them now and we'll just be respectful of the time. Maybe we can get out of here around 7:15. But it's really up to you all. We've got until 7:30 on our calendars, so we can hang out for a while. And I'd love it if you'd use the raise hand feature, and Ashley and I will be here to moderate. Hi, Valeria. Nice to see you.
Hi, Annabelle. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry I don't have a video. So I'm Valeria Bravat. I'm Director of Programs for West Marine Fund. And it's my first time attending one of these meetings. And I just wanted to say how incredibly informative and helpful it was. What a wonderful space. And of course, I would love to hear more about everything that was presented, but I was particularly intrigued by the budgeting exercise. So I would love to hear more about that.
Peter, Megan, you're on.
Peter's sulking because I cut all his slides out.
No, it's okay. Okay. We're good. Everybody seems happy, so let's just leave it at that.
Nope. Valeria's intrigued and eager to hear more. Do you want to talk about?
I guess I could frame a question on how do I get how do I learn more about it, I guess. And if you want to expand on something that you maybe
Oh,
because
great.
we had little time, and you want to, yeah.
Yeah.
And I would love to just say before we get into the deep end that if this is an area that folks are particularly interested in, I saw lots of hands and clapping and thumbs up, that the civic group is happy to hold a breakout session at a later date, maybe in 2 weeks, that we can really get into this if Peter and Megan are willing. And I'm seeing nodding heads that might be of interest, so we can get that on the calendar. But in the meantime, I'll pass it back to Peter.
So I'm happy to go any direction that you might think is helpful. What would you like me to do?
I guess that that concept of a community services district keeps bubbling around because it would, once we sort of rolled up all the information that Peter's been pulling together into that draft, the proxy budget, I think a couple of things would be really interesting to do. One, walk that around to the people who really know in town, like the people who long worked in BPUD, present and retired, and say, what do you see that's missing here? What do you see that's not showing up on your 5-year plan, but is coming down the pike? And do the same thing with other folks in town that would do that, so that it becomes a richly informed document from all the good, wise brains of Bolinas who've been living with the infrastructure and thinking about it and contemplating forward, and really include the Steve Matson sea level rise analysis, and make sure that there's a organized way to be weaving that in, and then identifying the streams of existing revenue that, of course, support so many aspects of, for example, the BPUD's infrastructure, and some of the other conventional sources of funding for the roads infrastructure. Find out from that breakdown what our specific asks are back into the county's budget and into their planning, so that it's not just completely random if a pothole's fixed or a whole road is replaced, and we have some input on that planning, and then find out where the, where the real holes are. If we do end up planning any kind of tranched move of key aspects of the downtown, that would be long-term funding that we might end up needing a mechanism like a community services district to do on our own. And the other thing a CSD could do is let us not just go hat in hand to the county, but go very directly to state and federal and philanthropic sources. So that's, I don't know if that was helpful, Valerie, but, and then we could have a page where that kind of information lives on the BCG site.
Yeah, I think for me, I think Megan's articulation is very good. I think for me, one of the things that really resonates about Bolinas is Megan's mentioned this to me a number of times over the years. It's not like a one conversation we've had, but and I've gotten to know Megan's dad, Steve, quite well. We're coming off of a 50-year history with a lot of things that were done, and the important things that were done in the community over those 50 years. And many of those things are aging now. If you talk to BPUD, which we have, the infrastructure gets old. It doesn't last forever. So we have lots of things to think about. And I would just be very excited in the most optimistic sense about having a plan looking forward 25 to 50 years. And what would we visualize the community to be? Because these things wear out and have to be replaced. And I believe it's affordable. I've looked pretty carefully at the number of homes that are here, what the value of the tax base is. There's a lot that can be done. And I think Megan's right. Adding on the state, federal, and county support, there's a lot that can be done. But I'm going to repeat something I said earlier in the conversation. Right now, we don't have a budget, and the county doesn't give us one. And they have a budget. So I think it's our turn to say, well, so do we have a proxy budget. You got one, and now we've got one. And let's start to talk about, what we want to get done and what we want to ask for, and think of the ways to make it happen. And not to be too abstract, I can give you the list. There's roads and transportation, water and wastewater, communications, energy. You might say, well, energy is fine. PG&E delivers our energy to us. That's becoming less reliable all over the state, by the way. It's becoming problematic. So inexpensive. So it needs to be discussed. Energy, and then social infrastructure. And people go, well, what's social infrastructure? A pool, community center, the things that I think people in the community have talked about. I'm not advocating for one thing or another. I'm just saying things that people have talked about. So let's get our story together and see if we can't be more proactive and be more organized on our side and kind of take the county on, because I think they owe us something.
Mina, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I love the budget and what y'all have created there. And I'm definitely interested in the deeper dive another day. But one thing that kind of came to my mind as you were talking about the number that you came up with and sort of the delta between like the 4 million and I don't remember what the higher number was if, for instance, our budget gets accepted and it's 9 million, I was kind of worried about getting locked into that particular number where like the following year there might be like, oh, so you got 9 million, that's now your budget. Whereas as you were talking about, like every so often, like I worked for the power company and we had like capital budgets and like maintenance budgets every year, right? And as things have aged in Bolinas, I think a lot of the things now past maintenance, and we're going to be doing more capital-based things, which are more expensive. So I was just kind of worried about sort of that delta and getting locked into any particular number, especially since you said it's more of a conservative number. So just thoughts, nothing.
Well, Megan reeled back a couple of my slides. Let me just say this about that question, because you're asking a really fun and good question. I've developed a financial model of Bolinas that incorporates an annual operating budget with a long-term capital budget, and you can look at funding alternatives. So You can be as grandiose as you want and unrealistic as you want, put a huge number in there, or you could put a smaller number in there, or you could put a medium number in there, and you could look at all three numbers and say, what would it be like to try to do these three things? The grand thing, the middle thing, and the more conservative thing. And now remember, I just want to repeat, operating budget plus long-term capital budget. I already have that model built, and we can have that. That Megan said that should be our next conversation, actually. How do you express those two things at the same time? And we're ready to do that.
I totally agree with you. You need to build room for total variability and unknowns into the planning.
What we see in other communities that we work in, we have this conversation in other communities, is that one thing I can tell you for certain that everybody's really challenged by, and we spent a lot of time down in Southern California, and we were there when the fire started a couple weeks ago. And one thing we know, climate change and all the things that affect us in relation to climate change are really impacting communities around the kind of planning we're talking about. It's getting very challenging because it's not status quo. It is not predictable. It's not predictable, and it's not status quo. So, I'll give you an example. Somebody in Southern California suddenly says, well, I realize we have a water system, and I realize it can accommodate 4 houses on fire at one time, but what about 400 or 4,000? Well, the answer is, well, no, it cannot accommodate that under any circumstances. So then the next question is, well, we all want to make sure we get homeowners insurance. And if we don't build infrastructure to deal with that issue, we probably won't get it. And the answer is that's probably true. So then the next question is, what are you going to do about it? It's not so easy. I don't think we really face that same challenge here, but I'm just letting you know what it's like in a Santa Ana wind zone in Southern California. And we are actually having these conversations down there, and it's hard. I mean, building resiliency infrastructure inside of existing infrastructure is a big deal, and it's hard.
That's where the social infrastructure is really important.
It is.
So we can keep having meetings like this.
But
when
we're
the
just
crazy
talking about
shit is happening.
we're just talking about little old Bolinas. Although, let's be careful. I think Steve Mattson's done a fantastic job of focusing us all on the possibility that the town's going to have to think about being flooded and how we react to it. And that's a real long-term issue that we have to react to. I'm optimistic it can be solved, but that's probably a bigger issue for us than the fire issue the people in the South are facing.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Megan. Any more questions, comments, reflections? Hi, Howard, go ahead.
Can I jump in?
Go ahead, Steve. Yeah.
I just want to say that I am actually working on an update of the proposal for moving the town up to Mesa Park, or at least my suggested solution to the problem of our downtown. It is soon going to be awash, much sooner than I think anyone are aware of. So that's in the process. I'm working on it, and we'll soon have an update. And getting back to the civic group, there's no way that my whole project of the sea rise and the possible solution would have been possible without the civic group. I just don't know how that concept could have been brought to the community and discussed, and will be invaluable for bringing that subject forward in the future. And I would also like just jump in and thank John Borg and his organization for his extraordinary work. Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Sherpas. We so appreciate you. Really Herculean effort over the last 600 some days. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I see Wendy's hand, but I'm wondering if Howard is still trying to ask his question.
Yeah. I'm just my question was a comment just to say that Annabelle, you're doing a great job. I really appreciate your moving this whole meeting along. It's been very nice. Thank you so much.
All around applause.
Yeah.
Oh, thank y'all. Wow. I love you very much. Every single one of you. Thanks. Make me blush. All right, Wendy, I see your hand.
Good
Go ahead.
I agree with all the good words on all the different people. And I have a quick question for Steve, I guess. I just happened to hear the BPUD meeting talking about county sea level rise stuff, and they didn't refer to anything that Steve was doing or anything that Bolinas was doing. And I'm just wondering if you've been in any conversation with them, because I think it's time for that.
I have not been in conversation with them recently, but
It would be helpful because they're actually, I happen to hear them saying about having meetings with some group I never heard of, but they're starting to talk about it. And I think, and it didn't sound like they knew anything about anything that was going on. And I think they'd appreciate it.
well, it's time that we barge in.
But,
Yeah,
but even just to let them know, just to even let them know or anything about what you're doing, I think would be helpful.
I agree. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Will and others circulated an email on the county's effort, and it's with AECOM, which is this engineering firm we're really familiar with. I'll send that to you, Papa, and then we should figure out how to insert.
I did. I actually got that.
Oh, you did? Okay, great.
Steve, I know you didn't formally present this evening, but there is a question for you in the comments of what our time horizon on severe flooding is from Mina. I wonder if you could briefly answer that question, or if you'd prefer to save it for the next meeting.
The latest projection for the western part of downtown Bolinas having a continuing underwater problem is within about 30 some odd years. It's my feeling, though, that because we're doing nothing about emissions, global emissions, that those timelines are going to occur much sooner than we are projecting at this point. So 30 some odd years and the downtown is in trouble. I'm pretty confident on that one. And the amount of work that we have to do in order to begin to prepare for a solution, such as my suggestion for the new town on Mesa Park, we got to start right now working on that. It's an incredibly complex and time-consuming project and costly. So
The other thing I would add to Steve's comment is, in our everyday lives, just the headlines, we're seeing more anomalies. It's one thing to say sea level rise is going to occur over 30 years and we're going to see this consistent degradation. That's true. I believe it's true. But we're also seeing anomalies. So we could have the world's worst goddarn atmospheric river storm next year, a 1 in 200 or a 1 in 500 storm, just like North Carolina experienced, or just a fire, not a fire here, I think, so much as Southern California, but using the fire in Southern California as an example of a strong anomaly, right? They have fires, but this one was extraordinary. I think that's the problem. We're seeing more anomalous events. So it could happen. One of those could happen at any time, I think.
Karen, I see your hand. You can go ahead.
Am I muted? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Does anyone have any suggestion as to how we can address the flooding in front of the school so that the town is not cut off so often? To whom do we address that?
I don't think it can be addressed. I'm sorry to say.
Okay.
Steve, I'm curious. Is there any chance that the work that's happening at the Y may be supportive in the flooding to that zone, that the water will be moving to its natural homeland, or unrelated? I saw John nodding his head, but maybe he's agreeing with my question, and I'm curious about that. So I know they've been doing so much work, and um, yeah, I know they won't start until the dry season, but maybe
The
it'll.
flooding at the school is completely because of Pine Gulch Creek. And so anything that's being done at the Y would have no effect on that.
Okay. Thanks. Well, I know we're maybe on a bummer note, which is
Think,
which is what it is, and these are the times. But what I have been talking about today is that we can have hope, because there are 22 people in this virtual room who care. And I know there are a lot more who do as well, who will be in the space, in the recording room later, and that we're going to get through this. And I said it earlier, but it's time now. And Will's radio show is it's time now. It's time now to get involved. If you've been waiting for the moment, we're there. And so there are so many projects, and it's time, I think, for us to be joining hands to see how we link them all together, because no one person, no one issue, no one project stands alone. And we have to hold some faith, or a lot. I think maybe the only thing that we can always have more of is faith. I see John's hand.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
Okay, so I agree. I feel like with all the stuff that's going on politically now, that it's more important than ever for people to look locally and to look within your own community and your own people. And basically, there's stuff coming at us from all angles. We can't, none of like it, they're purposely flooding the zone with crazy stuff, and we can't react to it all. But what we can do is we can pick our own individual issues, what's important to us, and we can put our energy into say, okay, I'm going to work on this, or this is important to me. Beyond that, we can be around and surround ourselves with people in our community, like-minded people, try to bring more consensus to the community and all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of people are staying away from the news right now and just trying to kind of like protect their mental health without kind of taking on too much. And that may be impacting even participation here on this level. But I think ultimately that this is what's going to sort of bring us back, rejuvenate, and basically we do it here in our community. And if other communities do it there around, collectively, we could kind of bring it back. And also, I think that it's the shock and awe of it all is like, it's actually not as, it's terrible, but the consensus of our country is not as bad as, it's not everybody is being stupid. There's not that many people. It's not, it's not the majority of Americans even. So there's that. Circling back to Bolinas Civic Group, what I like about it is particularly the technology is pretty good. It's very good, and there's a lot of technological aspects. Having the live meetings, having it streamed, and then having it on YouTube is pretty incredible, with good sound and just the ability to do this stuff. It's pretty incredible. And also it's very accessible to anybody. Anybody could do this. And so I think that one thing that we should try to figure out is how could we leverage this technology to get more people involved. And I think there are probably ways to do it that I don't know, but I think that's one thing. Another couple things is that an important thing is the documentation and really the history that's being recorded here. I mean, I echo Steve, like he's saying, the sea level rise issue gets elevated by this. Same thing with the post office. I mean, everybody really came together, and it was really these meetings that kind of made it all happen. And again, it's dragged on so long. It's been a challenge to keep the motivation and keep people interested or whatever, but without this, it wouldn't be happening. I also appreciate that it's very transparent and open. We're all sitting here talking, no one's editing us, and we're being recorded. So it's on YouTube. And if somebody wants to go see what I said, they're going to be able to go to YouTube and hope I said the right thing or whatever. It could be used against me. Another thing is, with regards to post office, I dealt with a lot of press. And every time I talk to a reporter, I'm like, check out this website, look at this YouTube channel. And all these articles that have been done on the post office, the reporters that did a deep dive, they all looked at all the particular Bolinas Civic Group meetings. And in their reporting, they're reporting on stuff that was said in these meetings and things that happened as a result of these meetings. So that in itself, like that's just one issue, but it's just an example of how critical that is, the accessibility of it, the transparency of it, the history of it. And really it's the kind of thing that when people are researching Bolinas, when I'm long gone, this stuff will potentially be there and it will be of interest. Because I think this is an incredible community and we're doing a lot of interesting stuff. And I think that there's a lot of challenges we face, but there's so much potential to work together and do some really out of box thinking and solutions. And I'm really loving this community service district idea and the idea of like budgets and funding. All that stuff is really huge. So that's just some comments on BCG.
Thank you so much, John. And Anna, I see I'm going to get to you in just 2 seconds. I want to formally apologize, but also really recognize Will Bartlett, who is not with us this evening, our executive director and leading person behind Bolinas Civic Group. Without them, this would not be possible. And their contributions to this community almost indescribable. Because of Will's noticeable absence, I want to apologize that we don't have interpretation this evening. In general, there is interpretation to Spanish, and also in our in-person meetings, a technology that Will built from scratch that is real-time translation in headphones. So as someone is speaking, the headphones are speaking Spanish, and it's really cool. And it hasn't been utilized as much as we would like it to. So please spread the word that that is available. I'm very sorry it wasn't available this evening, but we'll get it there next month. And Anna, I'd love to hear from you, and then we'll get ready to close.
Just briefly, I want to share first gratitude again, but also I think a lot about well-being and resilience, and I think along the lines of what we see in the natural world and how in natural communities, in an ecology, health and resilience, the ability to recover from shocks and from challenges, stressors, et cetera, completely informed by strength and diversity of relationship. And I see that as something we're really leaning into here in this space and in other spaces in our community. And I just want to make a plea or a pitch. These words are failing me here with the right energy, but we think about like social infrastructure and invisible structures that allow us to really deepen our capacity to hear each other. And that comes along relationship and hearing each other's stories and getting to know each other and like really being in a lot of different spaces with each other. And that's like kind of the connective tissue, if you will. But like the more we're able to really know who we are and love each other and support each other. Hi. Thank you. The better positioned we will be to navigate whatever comes our way.
Oh, thank you, Anna. So continually inspired by you and all of the work that you're doing to hold us in community. And we do have a little more time. Harriet, go ahead.
Can I say one thing?
You may.
One of the things that I've been really inspired by lately has been the collaboration between the museum and the school. And we talk about things being going on for 50 years and needing some revisions and whatever. But if you ever want to get a thrill, walk by the school, talk to some of the kids in the school. The connection between the museum is great. The art shop program is great. the teachers are great, the administration is great, and the kids are really happy. So I just want to throw that out there because we're doing good in that sense. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you, Harriet, for sharing that good news.
Mhm.
Elia, yes, please jump in.
I just want to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm so grateful to all of you for all of this, for the insights, for the intelligence. I just would like to see more of our younger generation in this community, the parents who are raising their children here, to come to some of these meetings, either Zoom or personally, because we really need that participation. So that's all. And thank you all.
Thank you, Elia. Some thoughts that are coming to mind, and we will close, I promise. I know I've been saying it now for a very long time. Is that I see Stu on this meeting, and I've been putting people on the spot. I'm sorry to do this, but I'm wondering if there might be a volunteer. It doesn't have to be Stu, but I know Stu has hands in the hearsay in our free press. That someone might be willing to volunteer to print flyers every month. We are a very small team working multiple jobs, all of us, way past full time. And so this truly is a labor of love. If there's any way that anyone can support with, whether it's printing a flyer or supporting with time as our very most valuable resource, of which we are all broke, that would be cool. And hi, Stephanie.
Yeah, when you say print a flyer, do you mean design it and print it or just print it?
Usually either I or this month, with all the love, it was your girl. But Will or I design a flyer, and then it just needs to be printed. So it's a donation of maybe paper, ink, and time.
And how many do you need per month?
Well, I heard the suggestion that flyers are posted all over town ahead of the meeting. So as many as one would be willing to print in full color would be very cool.
I can do that.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yay, that's great.
Yeah, I help out in a print shop in Berkeley on Fridays.
Oh,
So
wow.
just let me know. Anything, anybody, just let me know.
This is
And
the
I'm
good
usually
stuff.
then in town on Sundays, so timing's a little funky, but we'll work it out.
Oh, thank you so, so much. So grateful. That gives us a deadline before the meeting too to get the flyer done and to you. So
Yeah, and I can do like 11 by 17 posters too. So just let me know.
that would be amazing.
Okay.
Oh. All right. Bolinas is my Valentine. Now and always. I am so grateful for all of your energy, your hearts, your time, your attention, your focus, your dedication. This is hella cool. We're in it together. So we're gonna keep going. We'll see you next month. We're here every second Wednesday. And we've decided to do in-person meetings quarterly, and it'll be wrapped up with soup and food and things. So stay tuned for that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We sure love you. Have a great evening. Sleep well when you get there. Stay dry.
Thank you, Annabelle.
Thanks, Steve. See ya.
Thank you.
Wow.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thanks, Annabelle. Great job.
Thanks, John.
Yay. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Storm's
Thank you,
coming.
Annabelle. Really good.
Thank you, Karen.
How do I leave? Leaving. Bye.
Bye, John. All right, we're gonna end this for all y'all. See ya.